Hey guys, and welcome to another movie review. This time I'm talking about the new Dungeons & Dragons movie, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. And the movie, like most people, I was not very excited for this movie. It didn't look anything special, and although now trailers can be deceiving in modern days, especially that the best movies, I would say, don't have very good trailers, while movies with best trailers tend to actually often be very disappointing. But so the trailers didn't do much for me actually or anything, and the fact how they were talking about this emasculating man, that kind of even more turned me off. Like why this virtue signaling for all, I don't get it. So like most people, I was not interested in Dungeons & Dragons movie. But once it came out, I heard from people that it ranged from decent to outright pretty good. So I got hopeful for this movie. But before we get into the movie itself, I'll give you some of my backstory with Dungeons & Dragons. I sadly never played the tabletop games. I always wanted to, but I never got a chance. In my boarding school, some of my friends actually had Friday nights where they played it in the basement, but sadly they started the campaign and for some reason they didn't want me to join them. Although I did sometimes come and watch them play, at the end of the day I was not part of the campaign. Then one of them decided to create his own campaign and actually invited me to be part of it, but sadly it didn't go anywhere and we only had literally one meeting. Yeah, and then in college there were lots of groups of people playing Dungeons & Dragons, but somehow, for some reason, I never got a chance to join any of them. So yes, I always wished to try Dungeons & Dragons and had actually people around me play it, but for some reason never had a chance to actually become a member of the playing. So yeah, although I still hope I will get a chance to play, then to be part of the Dungeons & Dragons campaign, because it does look really cool. So my experience with Dungeons & Dragons was mostly through video games. I remember this great arcade game, actually Dungeons & Dragons Shadow over Mystara, which actually is available on Steam now actually. It's like this classic beat 'em up where you can play, and in this game you can play either as an elf, or as a magician, or as a thief, or a warrior, cleric, yeah, all those classes. And then you fight various fantasy monsters like goblins, ghouls, ogres, dragons, yeah, all that stuff you expect from fantasy. It was a pretty fun game, and I actually have it on Steam now again, because yeah, this Capcom beat 'em up is lots and lots of fun. And that was actually my very first experience with Dungeons & Dragons. That was even before I knew that there was a a tabletop game and where it originated from. And also, when I was a kid, I did also play Baldur's Gate when I was much younger, but again, I did not know it had anything to do with Dungeons & Dragons until I much later found out Baldur's Gate was part of the Dungeons & Dragons franchise. And they do talk a lot about here in this movie about Baldur's Gate actually. But I think I already told my experience and story with Dungeons & Dragons quite a lot. So, let's get to the actual movie now. The story is rather simple. It's about this man named Edgin and his friend, a barbarian named Holga, and how they gather and recruit other people into their band of misfits, and they go on an adventure. And on the way they encounter many different various classical monsters from Dungeons & Dragons. But later in the end they decide to fight for justice. Yeah. Rather simple story, but I think it was pretty well executed and entertaining. So, yeah, I actually was pretty much enjoying myself with this story. And also, especially the main character Edgin, I kind of like his character arc. In the very beginning of the movie, we learn his backstory and how his wife died very early, and then had to raise his daughter alone, and then he met this barbarian Holga, who basically became like a mother to his daughter, although the relationship was very much platonic friendship, not romantic, which I also like a lot, by the way. Yeah, and though Edgen was very much obsessed with bringing his wife back to life, so he kind of abandoned his daughter just so he could find a wishing stone or whatever that could resurrect his wife back. And that's actually one of the major plot points from the story. And his daughter naturally gets angry at him, and she doesn't like her father because of that. And even one of the early scenes when Edgen and Holga reunite with the daughter, she actually runs and hugs Holga, but is very disappointed with her father. Yeah, and I thought that was pretty cool. I really liked that, and it gave a very good motivation and good character arc for Edgen. And I thought that character arc paid off well at the end of the movie, but we'll get to this later. The characters are rather likable, like especially Edgen, played by Chris Pine, is like a very good protagonist, and he's likable, relatable, and his character arc is actually very interesting, and I liked it a lot. And then there is also this druid. So yes, there's also this druid named Doric. She was also a very likable character, and I really liked her backstory, as well as this half-elf sorcerer named Simon. He was very interesting, and I also liked how he used magic, and he was basically the wizard of the group, and I love the way he used magic in this movie. Yeah. And Holga, the barbarian, at first I kind of thought she was very overpowered, but I'm actually glad it didn't really go this way. And you'll see what I'm talking about when you see the ending of the movie, because I'm not going to actually spoil the endings. So, yeah, and another thing I liked is that the appearance of many different creatures and monsters from Dungeons and Dragons. Like, for example, there was a very, very fat, obese dragon, which was kind of hilarious actually. And then the movie was actually pretty funny, so it made sense. And I actually thought the dragon looked pretty good. Yeah, that's what I liked about the movie. Like, it didn't over-rely on CGI too much, but when it did use CGI, it actually looked decent. And though, when the movie could, it actually used practical effects. Which, congratulations for that. Yeah, I'm very much a practical effects sort of guy. And also the landscapes and the environments looked pretty good. Like, yeah, I very much loved the visuals and the landscapes in this movie. Like, this is the type of movie I would not very much expect to have such good landscapes, but it did. Maybe not as good as like in Lord of the Rings or The Northman or Braveheart, but they were still pretty good landscapes. I loved the green scenery, for example, or the oceans. Yeah, and I also love the many Easter eggs that references some of the things I know about Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it talked a lot about Baldur's Gate, for example, which was pretty nostalgic to me, because Baldur's Gate video games are very nostalgic to me, because I played them in childhood. And they also talk about Neverwinter. I never actually played Neverwinter Nights games, but I remember my father playing them, and I watched him play them a little bit. So yeah, so I loved all those Easter eggs. And returning to the different creatures that they encountered, as much as I loved all the creatures from that I seen in the video games, I kind of wish there was a little more of them. Like, there was one particular scene where Holga tries to open a chest, and the chest starts biting her, which was very nice, because that was something that I seen in video games, and I predicted certainly in the tabletop games, but again, as I said in the beginning, I never played the tabletop games, but I'm almost certain that that's where they obviously originated from. And there was also one of the bosses from the Shadow over Mr. arcade game they talked about. More precisely, Displacer Beast. If you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, you most certainly know what I'm talking about, but if you know nothing about Dungeons and Dragons, oh well, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, Displacer Beast was there too. And in general, I thought the movie was pretty well made, actually. Like, it was certainly very lighthearted, and it wasn't like one of those modern gritty brutal fantasies like Game of Thrones, or one of the epic fantasies like Lord of the Rings. No, it was pretty light-hearted, like standard adventure. If I had to compare it to a movie, I would say it gave me like Princess Bride vibes. Like The Princess Bride, I would say, is a much better movie, but if I had to compare it to any fantasy movie, yeah, The Princess Bride would probably be the best comparison. Though, I personally think it actually worked for Dungeons and Dragons. Like, seeing how that, yeah, I don't know if Dungeons and Dragons could work as a brutal fantasy in the style of Game of Thrones or a serious epic one like Lord of the Rings. In fact, I think if they try to go for a too serious tone, that potentially could actually make it not very good. So I guess the fact that they went for a comedic, light-hearted style of The Princess Bride was probably a very good decision, actually, and this is why the movie actually worked for me. So overall, Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves is certainly a good time, and I recommend you go see it in theaters, because I had a very good time with Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. It's most certainly not a groundbreaking movie or anything, but it's certainly a pretty good time. So if you just want to have a good time and enjoy yourself, Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves is most certainly worth a watch. And as I said, it's certainly much better than it had any right to be and than I ever expected it. So, yeah. Okay guys, thank you for checking out this video. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I'll talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you soon, bye!